All right, today we are looking at RRSPs, TFSAs, first home savings accounts, RESPs, RDSPs, and contribution deadlines for 2025. All the information you need to understand exactly what to do by year end, and the key contribution dates are right here in this video. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to show you how you can double your deduction on first home savings account contributions when you buy your first home. My name's Sam. I'm a CFP professional, and I help millennials make better financial decisions. I run my own firm, and I've been named as one of the top young advisors in Canada under the age of 40. I'm new to YouTube, so if you guys can help me out by clicking subscribe, and that would just help these videos get shown to a much wider audience, as I'm one of the only YouTubers on here speaking to the millennial generation, helping them get their money in order. So let's dive right in. The first thing we're going to talk about is RRSPs. RRSPs are a fantastic tool. They get a bit of a bad rep because, sometimes we hear old people saying like, oh, if I pay tax on every withdrawal and can't believe the government's taking so much tax money. And yeah, sure, we get taxed like crazy in Canada, but RRSPs are actually a really good tool, and I'm going to show you why. So imagine today you're making, let's say, $200,000. You're taxed at about 48% in Ontario. Well, you can make an RRSP contribution and get a 48% tax savings, often in the form of a refund. So a $10,000 contribution saves you about $4,800 in tax. Now, fast forward to when you're in retirement, and let's say you're making $100,000. Now you're at a 43% marginal tax bracket, and you take out $10,000. Well, now you're only going to get taxed $4,300, and you've saved $500 in taxes because you got a $4,800 refund, you took it out, and you got charged $4,300. So it's a pretty good deal, and often people are in significantly lower tax brackets when they're in retirement versus when they're working. So RRSPs are good. Now, the deadline to contribute for RRSPs is March 2nd of 2026. So remember that date, March 2nd of 2026. You have to have contributed for RRSPs if you want that contribution to count against 2025's income. So one of the things I always recommend doing with my clients is we're going to sit down at the end of the year. Maybe we've made some RRSP contributions throughout the year. That's fine. But we want to sit down at the end of the year and we want to look, what was your total income? What's your total tax bill? What's the optimal amount of RRSPs to contribute? Should we max it out, or should we contribute a lesser amount to optimize your tax bracket planning? And so that's important to do. Sit down with your financial advisor or planner, or if they have no idea what you're talking about here, come see me, click the link in the bio. Now, here's the cool thing about RRSP deduction room. You don't actually have to claim all the deductions in the same calendar year. So for example, let's say you're about to buy a house and you put all $60,000 in to utilize the RRSP home buyers plan, because you can take $60,000 out tax-free and then have to pay it back over 15 years, but you don't pay any tax on the withdrawal. So it's a pretty good plan. So I would like to use this example. Let's say you're $10,000 away from the lower tax bracket. So you put $60,000 in, but you may only want to claim $10,000 because that will take you into the lower tax bracket, and then any deduction beyond that has a limited effect. It starts to refund you less money. So, but next year, you're going to be $15,000 into the higher tax bracket. Then next year, you claim $15,000 off that $60,000 contribution. So you can carry forward your contributions. And many people don't know that about RRSPs. The other thing, the home buyers plan is a great tool alongside the first home savings account, which we're going to talk in a second. You can contribute up to $60,000, get deductions on the $60,000, and then withdraw the $60,000 to buy your first home. You have to be qualified. And again, you have to do that if you want it to count for 2025's income as a deduction. You have to do that by March 2nd of 2026. Now let's talk about the tax-free savings account. The TFSA, as many of you know, is an account where you can earn income tax-free from investment decisions. So you make an investment in ETFs, in stocks, in mutual funds, whatever you want to invest in, as long as it's an approved investment under the TFSA, which most are, you will be able to have all that grow tax-free. And I mean, in a year like 2025, we saw our client portfolios grow by around 20 to 21%, which isn't a normal year, right? Like that's a pretty substantial year. If you've got $100,000, that's $21,000 of tax-free growth inside your tax-free savings account. That's a pretty good deal. And so the TFSA, doesn't really have contribution deadlines because your prior year's room carries forward to the next year. But it does have withdrawal reset rules. So one of the things I always advise clients is if you have a big purchase coming in 2026 that you're thinking you're going to need some money from your TFSA for, then withdraw the money in 2025. That way, the contribution room resets for 2026. So make sure you understand this, though. If you do want to do this, make sure you do the withdrawal before, I would say, December 26th. That gives it time to settle and you to actually have the cash to move out of your TFSA. So that would be my advice if you were going to make a withdrawal from your tax-free savings account. That's the only real deadline you need to understand for the TFSA. Now, the first home savings account, let's talk about this. This is a newer account, so a lot of people maybe are still a little bit fuzzy on the details here. The first home savings account is a fantastic tool because it allows you to get a tax deduction for putting money into the account and then allows you to take money out tax-free, and there's no repayment requirements. And there's also no mandatory minimum holding period like the RRSP has for the home buyers plan. You could literally put money in, claim the deduction, take it out the very next day. So the deadline, and this is important because in order to actually contribute to an FHSA and have your eligibility start for an FHSA, you have to have an account open. And you can only carry forward $8,000 of room in any given year. So it's not like the TFSA where as soon as you open it, you start accumulating room that carries forward indefinitely. No, with the FHSA, you can only carry forward $8,000 of room, meaning in one calendar year, you can only ever have $16,000 of eligible contribution room. And because this account has to be closed on the 15th year after it's been opened, you don't want to open it necessarily too far in advance of you making contributions, because if you don't end up buying a home within the 15 years, or you may limit your actual ability to contribute over that time frame if you leave it open but have a $0 balance for too many years. Unlike RSPs where you can contribute into the next calendar year and have it counted for the prior calendar year, there's no such exception for the first home savings account. So you have to understand that if you want to make a contribution and have it count for 2025, you have to make it by December 31st of 2025. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I'm going to walk you through a little known trick where you can get a deduction on the same dollar 2 times with the first home savings account. Let's check this out. So in order to open a first home savings account, you have to be a first-time home buyer, which means you can't have owned a property that you've lived in or owned or lived with a spouse that's owned property in their property that they've owned for at least 4 years prior to opening the account. So if you've never owned a property, great, you're in the clear. If you've never lived with a spouse who's owned property that you've lived in, great, you're in the clear. Now, you open the account. This is in this example. You open the account, you put $8,000 in. Great, you get the tax deduction for $8,000. But then you're entering into agreement to buy a house. Okay, so what do? It's December and you're buying the house, let's say in January. Because you've entered into an agreement to buy the house, you can now withdraw money from the first home savings account. Great. So if you withdraw the money in December, the money you've already gotten a deduction on, and then you put it back in January because you've got another $8,000 of room, then you've gotten a deduction 2 times on the same $8,000, which is kind of wild to think about because you got the initial deduction putting it in, and then when you've taken it out because you've entered into an agreement to buy a qualified home, because you are still eligible and you reset your contribution room the next year, you are able to put the $8,000 back in and then take it back out. So that's a pretty wild thing. There is another more advanced method where you can even get a triple deduction on the same dollar, basically by inserting the RSP home buyers plan in there, but that's outside of the scope of this video. I'll make one on that later. All right, RESPs or Registered Education Savings Plans. These plans are fantastic. Once you've maxed out your TFSA and RSP, they're the only other registered plan that allows you to put money in and have it grow without paying immediate taxes on the growth. And you get government grants to the tune of 20% per year up to a certain maximum. The maximum is $2,500 per year that you can get 20% on, or in years that you've missed, you can catch up and double that. You can put $5,000 into the RESP and have $1,000 in government grants come your way. Now, The key with the RESP is that you have to make the contribution before December 31st to count for the 2025 contribution calendar year. Again, if you miss it, you can catch up the next year, but if you miss too many years, then you run the risk of not being able to max out the grants if you miss too many years. The last year that, like, let's say you've not contributed any dollars to an RESP for your child and they're 10 years old, that's the last year where you can realistically catch up on grants. So make sure that you're not letting this, get too many years of missed contributions if you're planning on contributing to an RESP for your child. A couple key notes about the RESP here. So make sure that you don't exceed the contribution deadline, which is $50,000 over the lifetime of the plan. If you do, there's a 1% per month penalty on the overcontribution. All right, the last account we're going to look at here is the Registered Disability Savings Plan. The Registered Disability Savings Plan is available for people who qualify for the disability tax credit. You can set it up for yourself if you qualify, or you can set it up for a dependent or spouse or family member if they qualify. Now, the RDSP is a very restrictive account, but it offers some very lucrative benefits if you qualify. Essentially, every dollar that the contributor puts in can get matched by up to $3 by the government. In many cases, as long as you qualify with your household income, if you put in $1,500, the government will put in $3,500. That means a $1,500 contribution gets you a $5,000 balance by year end. The key is to remember the contribution date deadlines. You have until December 31st to make a contribution that counts for the current calendar year. Again, it's one of those things where you can catch up if you miss a year, but up to a certain maximum. Oftentimes, people get qualified for the disability tax credit and get that tax credit backdated. And if that's the case, you can backdate your application for the RDSP as well. When you do this, there's a maximum 10-year catch-up period. So there's also a maximum of $10,000 in government grants in one calendar year that can get allotted to you. So essentially, you have to be careful of exactly when you got the amounts backdated, and you have to ensure that you're not, putting too much money in and then not getting grants for part of that calculation. That's in catching up. But if you aren't in the catch-up phase and you're just in the regular contribution phase, a couple key things: the maximum contribution you can make over the lifetime of the plan is $200,000. There is no annual maximum outside of that $200,000 limit. But you always want to make sure that you're not contributing more than necessarily the plan will allot you grants for, unless you've got a specific strategy to kind of front end load the RDSP, because this will also give you tax deferred compounded growth on the RDSP, and it will give you government grants. So this is like a really good tool for anyone that has qualified for the disability tax credit. The goal of it essentially is to replace the Canada Pension Plan, which you may not be eligible for if you haven't been able to work due to a disability. But even if you are able to work and contribute to CPP, but you still are eligible for the disability tax credit, this is still an amazing plan for you. It's just really restrictive. The last year you can contribute is when you turn 49, and you can't make withdrawals until the year you turn 60, and every withdrawal is counted as taxable income. So it's a good plan. Remember the December 31st deadline. Thanks for watching this video. I made another video about year-end tax planning moves. It's linked here. Check out that video, and please subscribe if you want to master financial planning.